Hello, people of the internet, and welcome back to another edition of Movies Good, Internet Bad, a celebration of the cinema uploaded right here to the place that hates it the most. Got a barn burner for you today. I'm Cory, that's Shane, and we're talking about Joker, Madness for Two, Joke Harder, Folie A Deux. Shane, how are you, sir?
Good. Uh, Less good now that I saw this movie, but we'll talk
Oh
about
boy,
it.
here we go. It's going to be a spicy one on the show today, ladies and gents. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Tap that notification bell so you can get more real total expert analysis from two white guys on the internet. Shane, Joker Folie A Deux, directed by wannabe art house director Todd Phillips. How did you feel about this film? Or actually, hold on. Let's
Okay,
rewind first. Let's
sure.
set the stage here. We'll talk a little non-spoiler first,
Yeah.
and then we'll go into spoilers a little bit later, so that way anybody who hasn't seen it can still get our thoughts. But even before that, how did you feel about the first Joker movie?
I didn't love the first one. Uh, I enjoyed parts of it. I think Joaquin Phoenix's performance in it is very good.
Yep.
I was rooting for other nominees that year for the Academy Awards, but like I was not unhappy that he won. Like it was a good performance.
Who was he up
And
against that year?
oh gosh,
I
I
don't even
can't
remember.
remember specifically. It was I'll have to go look it up. But I remember at the time hoping that he wouldn't win because I forget who I wanted to win instead. But then when he won, I was like, that's fine. And then he talked about like murdering baby cows or something in
Okay,
his
so
speech.
he beat Leonardo DiCaprio's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood performance,
That's
and
right.
he
That's right.
also beat Adam Driver's Marriage Story performance,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
I think both of those are probably better than
Yeah. Probably
him as the
so.
Joker. Not
But
to say anything bad about his
that
performance as Joker in
category.
that movie, in the first
Yeah.
one. He's very
Yeah.
good, but
I think I was rooting for Adam Driver that
holy
year
cow.
because he was great in that movie. But anyways, different movie. But I think my problem with the first one was that its message was very muddled. I think the goal of it was like, hey, we let down the mentally ill in our society, but then it like props up the mental illness as like a awesome thing at the same time, and like he murders his therapist at the end. It's like, oh, well, this woman was trying to help him with the mental illness. So yeah, it's a little weird that and I think that actually comes through in the second one, because I think that what Todd Phillips' intention was for the first movie and what the reaction was were two completely different things.
Very different.
And it almost feels like after Frank Herbert wrote Dune, and he's like, "Wait, no, you weren't supposed to like Paul. Shit, I gotta write another one where
Dune
you're not
Messiah
supposed to like."
happened, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it felt like that, where he's like, "Oh fuck, oh
Well,
no, people really like him."
it's
Uh,
interesting you bring that up because I think that you can make that comparison between these two Joker movies and the first two Dune films that Denis Villeneuve has done.
mhm.
Because in the first one, you're like, okay, yeah, this Paul guy seems mostly all right, and then by the end of Dune Part Two, you're like,
Not
maybe
all
not so
right.
all right.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, interesting. I am a fan of the original Joker movie. I don't think it's a masterpiece like some people say. It's very clearly a blatant homage
yeah,
to Martin Scorsese's 70s and 80s movies, particularly The King of Comedy and Taxi Driver, which are both better films than the original Joker movie. But
yeah,
I get the idea, and I thought it was cool because it was something different. I'm
yeah,
very tired of the same old comic book stuff,
yeah,
which I think once we get into the second Joker movie, I think that's its biggest strength is that
yeah,
it's not a stereotypical comic book film.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so let's do non spoiler. Let's
Sure.
keep this on the surface. Uh, what, if anything, worked for you in the sequel?
I think Joaquin Phoenix was still good.
Okay,
Performance was still good. I liked Brendan Gleeson in
yeah,
this. I thought he was really good. Probably the highlight of the movie. I liked the Gary character,
hmm
which is not really a spoiler, but we'll get into it more later. Um, but there's a little brief appearance from that character who
yep.
does a really good job. Um, I appreciate the swing, I guess,
It's a big
that
one.
he
Yeah.
went for making this movie, but I don't think that he executed it at all.
Okay.
On its face, the concept of a like courtroom procedural slash musical starring the Joker is interesting. Like if you were to pitch that to me in a room, I'd be like, oh yeah, I think that's cool. But the musical aspects of it were half baked. Like there were not any huge, big musical numbers that you would expect in a musical, right? And especially one that is mostly told through fantasy, right? Like these are not things that are actually happening. These are fantasy moments in his head, and
Yep.
you would think you'd go big, and even bigger. And with the budget that they had, it felt really small. All the musical
200 million?
numbers were, yeah,
200
all the
million.
musical numbers were either he's just in jail or whatever, Arkham singing, or they're on a stage.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it. Like you compare it to something like La La Land and like the ending montage of La La Land, where it's like, all over the place and they're doing all these crazy musical numbers. Or, it's clearly inspired by old musicals.
Yeah.
They do the thing that I hate where they watch a movie that inspired the movie in the movie. I hate that trope. Hate it. When it came up, I was like, damn it, he did it.
You had to know that was coming.
Oh, God.
A little bit. I mean,
every time a movie does that, it's like, we get it. We understand. You were inspired by classic Hollywood musicals. You don't have to put a Hollywood musical in it. Anyways, that's my like number one pet peeve. It always comes up in movies. It's also what I hate about Logan. It's like my lone thing that I dislike about that movie.
Nitpick, right?
Yeah. Anyways. But yeah, it's the musical numbers were not very big, and they were just every time it broke into song, I was like, this is just not doing anything for the movie. Like if it was really fantastical and off the wall, then I can see like the appeal of it. But part of the benefit of it being a musical, or musicals in general, is that you get all these fantastic over the top musical numbers, and this just didn't have that. So if you're not going to have that, then why make it a musical at all?
Yeah, there were some parts of it where it would be just him and Gaga, and
just singing,
just outside a building. There's nothing else that tells you that it is a musical. There's music playing in the background that they don't hear clearly because it's diegetic. It's or not diegetic, the opposite of diegetic.
Yeah.
The audience hears it and the cast doesn't. It was a little strange, but I was thinking the musical numbers would be more similar to like the one in 500 Days of Summer. You know the one I'm talking about, where like the marching band comes out of nowhere and they're lifting him up on his shoulders and all this other stuff. None of that. Like playing a song in a jazz club is not really a musical number. It's just playing a song in a jazz club.
And it's not advancing the plot at all. It's just them kind of singing. Like one of the big, well, we'll talk about it in the spoilers, but towards the end of this film, I felt like that could have been a big musical number and they didn't go for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that was my main issue. And then obviously the other issue is that it's just kind of dull. Like it's just kind of dreary and not a lot happens. It was a courtroom procedural, but it's not really done like a well done courtroom procedural. Like those can work. Something like Oppenheimer works well at that. But it was just kind of dull. I found myself like a little bit bored in the second act of the movie.
Yeah, I think it was a little too long. I think that's the reason why. It clocks in at about 2 hours and 20 minutes, and the first one's only 2 hours.
Yeah.
So they did the typical sequel thing where they make this movie, it does really well, and then they get a whole bunch of extra money to make another one, and it becomes overstuffed and full of ideas that don't completely mesh together.
I just don't know where that budget went. Like $200 million, and there's not a lot of locations, and there's not a lot of CG. I can only imagine maybe they just paid Joaquin and Lady Gaga like half of the budget. I don't know.
It's entirely possible, but I thought, like I said before, the biggest strength of the movie is that it says basically screw the idea of it being a comic book.
Yeah.
Or a comic book movie, right? Like we're not going to do the big CGI fight them up at the end or any of that kind of crap. It very much sticks to its guns about being a drama about a guy with mental health issues.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I respect it for doing that. The big swing, which we'll talk about in spoilers, I always appreciate big swings. I'd rather people take chances than not. And then the cinematography was off the charts.
Yeah, I thought that was
The
good.
movie was beautiful to look at.
It was, yeah.
Even in its most dull scenes,
Yeah.
the lighting was exquisite. Lawrence Sher, who's a cinematographer there, did an absolutely terrific job.
Yep.
I didn't care much for a lot of it, but particularly like the way that the musical numbers, it almost felt like they interrupted the movie.
Yeah.
And when you watch a good musical, they are complementary to the film, and they naturally segue into them.
Yeah.
Right. This, it just kind of felt like we're talking musical, and just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And very, very strange, very, very odd in that regard. But the only thing I could think of that maybe this is why they did that sort of thing is because anytime a movie hits $1 billion, which the last one did, the movie studio automatically says we have to make a sequel, right?
Yes.
And if you're a director, are you just going to go back and do the same thing, or are you going to try something completely different? I think Todd Phillips said something along the lines of, if we're not doing something that scares the absolute shit out of us, why are we even making this movie?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that, and I can understand that. Execution, maybe not so much. But yeah, I think that's it for non-spoiler.
Yeah. I think overall my reaction to this is much more negative than the first one, and I didn't love the first one to begin with. I can imagine people that love the first one absolutely hating this for a variety of reasons,
for sure.
Which we'll talk about. But if you love the first one, I don't think there's much for you here. If you didn't love the first one, I also don't think there's much for you here. And so the question is, like, who is this even made for? And the answer is probably just Todd Phillips' conscience. Because he realized that everybody was idolizing the Joker, and so he makes a movie about how idolizing the Joker is bad.
Right. He was like, no, guys, wrong. You heard me wrong.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into spoilers. This is your big spoiler warning. If you're still with us for some reason and you haven't turned this video off yet and you haven't seen the movie, we're going to get into it. Let's talk about that ending.
You know, I appreciate Todd Phillips' messaging for saying, as long as we just prison rape all of our mentally ill patients, they'll get better. That was the message, right?
Yeah, totally.
Am I understanding that correctly?
Yep, you did. Yeah, just like the first movie. You nailed it. Todd, I hope you're watching, because Shane's media literacy is off the charts today. A lot of talk online about him saying there is no Joker, and a lot of talk online about the gang rape scene from The Guards, and a lot of talk online about them killing Arthur,
just murdering him,
just straight up murdering him. Random inmate that then does like an odd.
Does he become the Joker?
He did like a Heath Ledger homage, because he took the blade and he cut his face where
that's kind of what I was getting. Like, he becomes the Joker by killing the Joker. It's like the Batman, the Dark Knight Rises ending,
but
or something.
A little bit strange, because this is obviously not a clear connection to the Nolan movies, because there's a Harvey Dent in this one.
Yep.
And his face gets blown off.
When that happened, the person next to me whispered, Two-Face.
Oh,
like,
my God.
Very good. Thank you.
That's like one of our buddies went to go see Megalopolis the other week. And he said there was a guy sitting next to him that was like, Francis Ford Coppola, this and this, and he directed The Godfather, and his daughter's in the movie. And
you're so smart. Oh, my God.
Holy cow.
How did you get it? How did you understand it?
You know the lore behind Two-Face. He gets his face blown off. Holy cow.
Yeah. But just like the message from the first movie being like, we need to sympathize with our mentally ill individuals in this country and world. And then the ending of this movie being, we're just going to put him through hell and then rape him and then murder him. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's not exactly what I thought you were going to do.
The first movie, the intended message, as you're saying, is if we can relate to them and help them and get them through things, then violence will not happen. Escalation can
Yeah.
be pushed aside. And yet the message that a lot of people took from it is alpha male power fantasy.
Yeah.
So Todd Phillips making this movie had to like triple down on what he really wanted his messaging to be, which is where the "there is no Joker" line comes from, right? And it's more of a, this is a story about a dude who, he doesn't want to be the clown prince of crime. He just wants to be loved. He wants to be acknowledged, and he has emotional needs, and no one's giving them to him.
Yeah.
And this is what happened because of that. And then, obviously the snowball effect of all the other stuff. I don't know, that message is good on paper.
Yeah.
It was just kind of clunkily executed.
Yeah. I think the best scene of the film, or the two best scenes, were the Puddles interrogation, whatever, witness interrogation, and then his like monologue at the end where he's
Talking to the
there
jury.
is no joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those two were, it was like, okay, like this is a cohesive thing that could work. The issue was all the stuff around it just didn't satisfyingly lead to that.
Sure.
I thought that the testimony from Puddles was going to be like that light bulb moment for him, but it wasn't. And what eventually became the light bulb moment was getting raped in prison by the guards. It was just like, and maybe it was intended to be the Puddles thing, and like that was just a scene that was in there in between, but like it really muddles that. It's the same problem as the first movie. It doesn't know how to effectively tell the message it's trying to go for.
Yeah.
And so it ends up being very like misconstrued and confusing.
It's also a really big leap, because all he said about the guards was that they're fat and stupid.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he didn't say their names. He didn't say they've tortured me, they've done this, they've done that.
Yeah.
He didn't incriminate them for anything they've done.
Yeah.
And then he gets back and they're like, nope, get over here, boy.
Like, just weird pivot there.
Very
yeah, didn't love that. Although I guess they also then kill a guy, right? Is that they choke the guy out?
Ricky or whatever. Yeah, because he
sure. Why not?
When the Saints Go Marching in song,
yeah,
or whatever.
Not great. My other issues with the movie were like, I guess, minor things. I already talked about watching the movie in the movie. I already talked about the musical aspects. I didn't quite understand why all the inmates had lighters. Like how can she start a fire that nearly burns the building down, like with a cigarette?
I don't know, man. I thought about that and I was like, maybe it's because it's like a late 70s, early 80s, and everyone smokes kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just not considered like a method of violence or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seemed a little bit strange though, a lot of the prison aspects of it, but movie logic, I can
that's a like CinemaSins critique where it's like,
right,
oh,
exactly.
This, I can't get too hung up on it.
Yeah.
It just felt really bizarre and out of place. Like, just, we go from like watching a movie to the whole place is up in flames because she had a lighter. It's just weird.
So one thing I really did like though about the film is that and I'm sure this is something that a lot of people probably despised, is that they flipped the power dynamic between Joker and Harley Quinn.
Yeah, versus the comics.
Typically, Joker he's the boss, and Harley is like, I'll do anything for you. I'm in love with you, Mr. J. Blah 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 blah. And in this one, she's manipulating him to never be Arthur again and just be the Joker all the time, right? And then as soon as she finds out that he doesn't want to be that person, she pieces out, and that's it.
It reminds me, I had to imagine that the Ted Bundy documentary heavily inspired this movie.
Sure.
Because I think that Ted Bundy represented himself, like fired his lawyer, represented himself kind of thing after killing all the people. And there's a lot of people that like were attracted to Ted Bundy in the documentary. Like that was a big thing when it came out.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if like that's how he got the idea. It was like, what if there was this, what if Harley Quinn was like obsessed with Joker because he was a murderer kind of thing, and fell in love with him, blah, blah, blah. I also thought that the twist of her lying to him and like actually being like a rich, spoiled brat kind of thing, that didn't really hit for me. I thought they were going to go bigger with that twist. Like she was actually like master planning the whole thing, but like it just felt weird. Like she could have just been crazy. The twist didn't really add anything to the movie
Yeah.
because then she just apologizes for lying and then suddenly
Yeah.
everything's fine again. Like, okay.
He
What
says
was the
to her,
point?
"You checked yourself in here just to meet me?" And she's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." And he's like, "You could have just sent a letter."
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you're kind of right. You
Yeah.
could have just sent a letter, and that would have worked. But
Yeah, I
uh,
think the craziness would have worked just as well there. I don't know.
yeah, however, I really did like Lady Gaga in the
She was
movie.
good.
I think
She
she's a
didn't have enough
talented
to
actor.
do.
I think a lot of her stuff got cut.
Did it? There's a lot of stuff that I was seeing from the trailers, like
Trailers,
on
yeah,
Twitter, that people were complaining that like this was not in the movie.
yeah.
So I wonder how much got cut just in general, and feels a little bit like a movie that went through a lot of changes right up to the end to try
Would
and
have,
fix it. It may have
yeah,
been just a colossal disaster until then,
yeah.
and they, you know, it's still a colossal disaster. But I also think like it's not the way the reviews are saying is like this is the worst movie to exist. And I don't think it's that.
Not even
It's
close.
not good, but you know,
There,
it's not
there are
like
people saying it
offensively
was worse than
horrible.
Madam Web, and
Yeah.
there's absolutely no. I watched both. Madam Web is easily the worst movie I've seen this entire year. The Joker movie, at least on the two lead performances and the cinematography on its own, makes that better than Madam
Yeah.
Web. Madam Web is not a good movie.
Yeah, I think the issue is like it's all an expectations game, right? Everyone knew Madam Web was going to be bad, and it's bad, so
Well,
whatever. Everyone was hyping this up to be very good, and it was not good. So obviously, it's the worst thing to exist in the history of cinema.
yeah, but like a D cinema score,
That's low.
that's really low, man.
I can only imagine the people that they were polling were like, if you think about how cinema scores would work, right? Their opening weekend, the people that would be there right away to see Joker 2 would be huge fans of the first one, right?
And hardcore
It's-
comic book people.
Yeah, and this movie did not do either of those two aspects well. Like it very, very visibly shit on the first movie or reactions to the first movie. And it honestly, I feel like this movie did not need to be a comic book movie at all. Like it being a comic book movie hurt it.
Yep.
Because everybody wants to see the Joker. And the
Right. And
message
that takes
behind the
away from
film
the
is
whole
like,
story.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's you know, the Joker's not good kind of thing, but it's like, but that's why people are here.
Yeah. I texted a friend as soon as the movie was over, and I was like, the first and second movie, you could have done both of them without the comic book wrapper.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it probably would have still played relatively well. The first
Yeah.
one would probably draw more Taxi Driver comparisons than it already did. But still, in today's day and age, younger people probably haven't seen Taxi Driver or whatever, and I think people would eat that kind of stuff up. But
Yeah.
having the comic book expectation around it, it's like Star Wars. Everybody saw The Force Awakens, and then they had an idea in their head as to what The Last Jedi was going to be, and then when it wasn't that, they hated it. It's the worst thing ever, right? It's the same kind of idea here.
Yeah. I think people wanted this one to be, and I think the trailers kind of did this too, is like they showed a lot of scenes of like Joker being Joker. And then the actual movie is like, yeah, he's not actually Joker at all, except for like one scene, and it's in a courtroom. All the other stuff you saw in the trailer is him just daydreaming it.
It's all fantasy.
Yeah, which there is a scene where Todd Phillips speaks directly to the audience where it's like, can we give the people what they want? And I was like, come on, man. Like it's just like the first one where it's like he thinks he's cooking, and like you can tell that when he's writing this, he's like, oh yeah, this is it. That I am the best.
Yep.
And then like it's just so transparent.
Oddly similar to Megalopolis in the fact that it's a movie that thinks that it's smarter than it actually is.
Yeah. And I felt that way about the first Joker movie too. It thought it was doing a lot more heavy lifting than it actually was.
Whatever, right?
Yeah. And it's like, no, you're doing Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. Like that's what you're doing. And that's fine, but let's not make it out to be too much.
Yeah. So let's talk about two quick behind the scenes things on this movie that I think are interesting. Allegedly, they did 0 test screenings of this film.
I saw that.
Which in today's Hollywood, especially in today's comic book Hollywood, that is very atypical.
Yeah.
It is not common for a movie to not see the light of day until its release date. They at least focus group test it with some people somewhere to see if it's going to work, and then see if they're going to make any changes. There's a lot of talk online right now about how backlash is a thing from fandoms, and how studios are putting together like focus groups to be able to predetermine what will cause outrage or backlash or whatever. And then of course this movie comes out and it has no test screenings, and it gets hit with a ton of backlash, and it's like, okay, the studios are just going to learn the wrong thing.
And I think it's sad because, like we said, I appreciate the swing that it took. And I will always root for movies to take big swings, and I think that this was it's that term that everybody hates, where it's like subverting your expectations.
Yes.
This felt very much like that.
You know who invented it?
Ryan Johnson.
He's the first director in history to ever subvert expectations in anything. It took all the way until 2017 for cinema to subvert expectations. Anyway, go on.
But it felt very similar, right? Like everyone was big fans of this thing. It's a big franchise, and they do something anti-franchise kind of that flips it on its head, and everyone hates it. I think the biggest difference between The Last Jedi and this is that The Last Jedi is good enough of a movie on its own, even if like I'm not a huge fan of it, but like I can appreciate a lot of the things it does. And because of that, it did find an audience that adores it. And this will not. It's not, nobody's going to love this movie, I don't think.
Maybe in like 5 or 10 years, there'll be like that small group of.
It always happens, right? No, like, it's actually great. It's actually the best thing ever. Happens to everything now. Everything that gets shit on now. It's like The Acolyte. Everyone contends that it's a perfect show now. Like, no, it's not. But
I'm actively searching for the group of people that feel that way about the Guy Ritchie Aladdin movie. There's got to be a group. They have to exist. There's someone out there for everyone.
Yeah, it's
like there's a Harley Quinn for the Joker until he's not the Joker anymore. So the second thing that I thought was interesting, obviously DC has gone through a lot of changes over the last 5 or 10 years, but now they have firmly established DC Studios, which is run by James Gunn and Peter Safran. They are just kicking off their DC universe, which is going to be like their MCU, and then all these other projects like Todd Phillips stuff, the Matt Reeves Batman things, they're calling them Elseworlds projects. So it's like they're not connected to the main DC canon. They're their own thing. But funny enough, when you watch the Penguin show on HBO, the DC Studios logo plays before that show. The DC Studios logo did not play before this Joker movie. And a lot of people are like, yeah, James knew this movie was bullshit, and he was getting his name away from it. I don't think that's true, but they basically said that Warner Brothers, they greenlit this movie well before that whole shuffle happened. And it's less of a DC movie and more of a Warner Brothers movie, which I just found.
Even have the classic Warner Brothers animation intro to which I thought that was kind of fun.
I liked it. I thought that part of it was
like fun and different. It set up the movie well. But I get it. Like this was always going to be the end of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this guy dies. Right?
Sure. So. Well, yeah, sure. But it feels a little bit like J.J. Abrams, where he came in and did the Force Awakens, and everyone loved J.J. Abrams. And now he did The Rise of Skywalker, and then everyone hated J.J. Abrams. It's like that with Todd Phillips. Where
it makes you wonder: is there a lesson to be learned there, that when you set out to make a movie like the Joker, that was only intended to be one film?
Yeah.
Even if it cracks $1 billion and is lightning in a bottle and is this massively successful thing, first R-rated movie to ever hit $1 billion, do you need to go back and make a sequel just because the first one did so well?
Because now telling any executive that.
Well, right, but you can tell an executive that, but then you look at this one and
it's true.
They spent
they're
4
going to
times
lose
the
money.
amount of money on this one than on the first one. They're going to lose money.
Yeah,
and now the Joaquin Phoenix Joker world is maybe like a barely break even thing instead of a massively profitable thing, which it was before.
That's a good point. And like it sours the recognition of the first one.
For sure.
Sometimes just don't touch it, right?
Yeah.
You hit, and unless like Todd Phillips comes to you and he's like, I have this really amazing idea, which I don't know how this got greenlit. I don't know if they went to him saying like, we need a sequel, or if he went to the studio saying like, hey, I have this other idea. Whichever. If it's that he had the idea, then I can empathize with it a little bit more, but it's probably not what happened. So, they're probably like, this made $1 billion. We need part 2. We'll pay you a lot of money. From what I can gather,
it's a little bit of both. Apparently, they were floating around the idea in late 2019, early 2020, when the movie was like cracking all this money.
Yeah.
They wanted to do something on Broadway with it. But then they said, you know, to film a movie that's as emotionally draining as this, you do a couple takes and you're done, you move on. A Broadway show, you have to do it every single night of the week and then twice on the weekends.
Yeah.
Like from a mental health perspective, that would kill Joaquin to do that, right? So they shifted the idea to making another movie. And then when COVID hit, I guess that's when the gears started turning about whatever they wanted to do. But of course, Warner Brothers wanted to make another one just because of the financial opportunity that was there, which yikes.
It's actually incredible that this is going to lose money. Like, given how popular the first one was, like you have to really screw up to lose money on a sequel to that.
Yeah, but it's not the first time.
No.
I mean, look at Aquaman. Yeah. Aquaman made over $1 billion back in, I think it was almost the same year, 2018, 2019.
Yeah,
right in that
time sounds right. That sounds
Second one comes out, total flop.
Yeah.
Captain Marvel made over $1 billion when it first came out. And then The Marvels comes out, and it's the lowest grossing MCU film of all time.
I also feel like there's this weird sense that all of those movies back then were wildly profitable because they were popular IP.
It was a boom.
And I know that Joker is, but like there was a comic book bubble there.
Oh, yeah.
Where like every comic book movie that came out that year was doing crazy numbers. Even like Captain Marvel, nobody was at least to my knowledge, nobody is like a huge Captain Marvel comic fan, right? And some people are, but it's not like a big IP and then it cracks $1 billion, right? Yep. Aquaman, kind of the same thing. Nobody really cared about Aquaman that much, and then oh my gosh, right? And so it almost feels like every movie that came out that year just like did really well financially, so they greenlit sequels to all of them, and then it's like, oh wait, we're in a different time now, or
we are.
Comic books
in a
are
time
not
now where you have to make a good comic book movie.
Yeah.
To make money off it.
Yeah.
You know,
even Marvel is learning that, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at the ones that have come out this year, with whether it's Madam Web or this, or I mean, I'm sure Venom will do okay because it's got a little bit of a following already, but
yeah,
I mean, it's not great.
No.
at the moment for some of these superhero things, I guess, which is, you know, the only one that really broke through was Deadpool and Wolverine, and that was less because of the quality of the movie and more because of the actors that are in it, and you know, people wanted to see Hugh Jackman and cameos, all that other stuff. So it's a fascinating, I don't even know if genre is the right word, because comic book movies rip off other genres and everything, but like it's its own sandbox that people are playing in. And it used to be, I got a superhero movie, it's going to make $1 billion and I'm going to be rich. And now it's just not like that anymore.
Yeah.
Got to prove your worth at this point when you're making these films. So hopefully the creatives that are making some of these future comic book movies are aware of this, and they're making the necessary changes to do it. Because there are some big ones coming out, you know, next
Superman
year.
And
Superman,
Avengers, and Captain America,
Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts. There's a lot of comic book stuff next year that, if it's not good, it could really point that genre of movies in one direction or the other. So we'll see. But any thoughts on this one before we end this video like they ended Arthur Fleck?
My final thought is, don't go see this movie, go see The Wild Robot. And that's how I'm going to end this.
or any of the other prospective awards films that are coming out.
But mostly The Wild Robot.
We're getting into that time of year. Or go see Megalopolis by Francis Ford Coppola if you want a real wild time. I still have no idea what to make out of that movie.
If there should be like an award given to people if they do like a Joker 2 Megalopolis double feature. Like they should do the, like, you know, when you used to play Little League and they do like the tunnel of the adults and you run through it and then you get to your juice box and you free sun. You should do that for anyone that double features those two.
Free orange slices for anyone who makes it through the Jokeropolis double feature.
Yes.
Wow. Cool. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this video. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What are your thoughts on the first Joker movie? What are your thoughts on the second Joker movie? What are your thoughts on just the state of comic book films in general? Drop us a line and let us know. We'll respond to every comment that comes through. Please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click that notification bell for more, and we will see you guys in the next video.